Folks, we are live. Welcome to Talking Crit. I don't remember what the name of the show was. That's pretty bad. Next to me, stage right, is none other than Bad Mike Bottolato, my once a week work spouse. I won't call you wife because I don't want to assume anything, Mike. Um, and below us is none other than Doug Cole, Gaming Ballistic, probably the most organized man in the Kickstarter business that I know of in gaming. Which
So,
Mike,
so whenever we have Doug on, I always love those shows because I just get to chill. Because I know Doug will talk the whole time, which is great. But it was weird because you said, "Hey, we're going to have Doug on." I'm like, did we just have Doug on? And you're like, no, we hadn't had him on since last year. And I'm thinking,
then I had to look.
His face. I know I've seen his face. You go, oh yeah. We had him on in May. So Doug may want to be one of our most frequent guests on because even Eric and I like to take a break every once in a while and just sit back and let Doug wax poetic about gaming and Kickstarter because he knows more about Kickstarters than probably anybody. He has spreadsheets and shit. I mean, he keeps track of this shit. He doesn't fly by the seat of his pants. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing.
He's a project manager by nature. And this is obvious when you talk to him, when you see his work. I've never seen a project come late from Doug. It's usually spades on early. I'm no longer surprised when Doug comes up with something like 3 months ahead of hitting the mark. And even the mark I saw was like, wow, that's pretty short timing. But he knows his stuff. So
yeah. I will say that this last one that I did, the Fantasy Trip Kickstarter for the solo, I don't think that, you have these projects that you hear about where everything goes wrong and it's really nobody's fault.
Right.
Right. And that kind of stuff. And you do what you can and it's horrible and whatever. But this last one, I don't think I could have had everything go right like it did. Right. I mean, the writing was solid and it didn't take long to edit because David does great stuff. And we were able to get play testing in, and we got great feedback right away. And the artists were all quick off the mark, and it helps that I've worked with them for a while. That kind of thing, and I launched it 2 days before I went to school. I went to 2 days before my kids finished school on June 7th.
Okay.
It was funded very quickly. I went to Hawaii for a vacation on the 9th, but all content creation was finished by June 30th, and as of exactly 2 months and 2 days, every package is either in somebody's physical stuff is either in people's hands or on the way, and the gotten their stuff yet are literally a half dozen people not in the United Kingdom that shipped out of the UK, and it took a few days for importing because there was a glitch in Games Quest importing software. But it basically the entire thing, beginning to end, including physical delivery, was 2 months long, and I am a little proud of that. Because it was 575 backers. This was not 7 people. This was one of my larger Kickstarters, and Mixum did a great job. I had extra inventory from an old print run that came in from Tennessee. Just everything, and Mixum had some stumbles over the last couple of years during the pandemic. But they hit it just right, and the paper was good, and so it really worked out. Nice.
Now, Mixum seems to be the company that'll. I know Phil Reed was the first person that really spoke highly of Mixum. Got a lot of the zine writers and other Kickstarter creators behind them. The quality of the stuff that I backed from Phil is spot on. When he does print, he uses Mixum. He doesn't always do print. Sometimes he just does PDF. But when he does print, the quality is extremely high.
It is quite good. I think they got my impression is that they got so much business because of the pandemic and everyone was doing stuff, and then people were publicizing the excellent quality, and I think that they grew a little fast, and so for a while people were having a hard time. The quality was falling off. I think they were getting pushback on reprints, even when they screwed up my Vampire Hunter Belladonna print run of 100. They gave a little pushback, and I was like, look, here are the maps. And the most important thing about this map is the internal hex grid. And you can't see it. It's gone. It's a cavern with an empty room. I'm like, this is a hex map without hexes. This is unacceptable. And I said, here's a print run from a competitor, and here's what it's supposed to look like. And they're like, all right, fine. Send me a video of you destroying the stuff, and we'll give you a credit. And do you want to rerun? I'm like, actually, no. I happened to find a couple hundred from the print run that I just showed you that I forgot were sitting in my warehouse in Tennessee. So I took care of all that. But and they processed the refund, and it was all cool. But you do have to be careful. I was a little wary of. I think I ran out of like 8 or 9 of my low stock books. Which, yay, run through a print run. But that's the great thing about Mix'em is once you get past 25 or 50 copies, the cost per copy is quite reasonable. You can make money without being, especially if you're selling direct to consumer, you can make money even selling 5 copies or 10 copies because the cost of the digital print, the startup cost is like $25.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not. By the time you get to 5 copies, you're at $5 per copy.
Right.
And you can make money on that. I mean, you don't need to get down to $1 or $2, but you can, right? And it smoothly, their automated quote generator smoothly transitions from digital to offset. So if you get to a certain place, all of a sudden your slope changes, and your marginal cost per additional copy starts going down.
See, I guess go ahead, Mike.
So we don't even have mentioned why we got Doug on the show. We just launched straight into
right into Kickstarters, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is this industry because right now Douglas does have a Kickstarter, and what's really cool is it's probably the hottest OSR system today, which is OSE, Old School Essentials, which is it mimics BX in quite a few ways, but it's really cool stuff. I'm really into it right now. Here's all my research by the thing. I've been doing lots of OSE reading myself, so I'm interested in this Kickstarter. And you've already funded because OSE is pretty hot, man. It really is. They just had a Kickstarter where they made $750,000, which is pretty amazing for an old school. That may be the highest ever old school OSR oriented Kickstarter ever. So there's a lot of people that play this. It's a really very simple, cool game. And if you've ever played BX, Basic D&D, this is basically exactly what it is.
Yep.
So tell us about. So you just did some solo adventures for the
Fantasy Trip. Yeah, that's right. And so the Fantasy Trip and OSE or BX or whatever are kindred spirits in a way. They both came from roughly the same generation of gaming, late 70s, early 80s. TFT came out because Steve and had his thoughts about where the games of the time could do better, as most game designers do. I could do this better or differently or whatever. And so, it was hexes and it was tactical combat game and whatever, but it's still relatively rules light. Melee and Wizard especially, the original tactical combat games, were pretty quick, and make a character. Let me see if I can find one. Make a little character like this guy here on a 3x5 on a card. Zip zap zip on a little tear off piece of paper, and try and kill your friends over lunch and pack it up and play the next day. And it was that kind of game. And then it grew into In the Labyrinth, which is the role-playing version of that, and it added some talents, which are awareness, or your sword talent or axe talent to use your weapons, or shield expertise to be really cool with that. And there might be Physiker was to be a medic. Not a lot of magical healing in TFT. But it's a one roll system, just like, or two rolls really. There's an attack roll and an effect roll, damage roll, and so it's really a lot like BX, which is you have an attack roll and a damage roll. Really, there's no defense roll like GURPS morphed into, but it's not a truly one roll system where the margin of success in your attack roll does your damage. So which is fine. That's not a criticism. Anyway, long story less long is the two games are kindred spirits, and Eric, I started playing with you in 2014,
right,
in Swords and Wizardry, and that was an old school game, and it's always impressed me how those rules light systems, you could really jam a lot of adventuring into a couple of hours.
Yep.
And I remember we were doing Evil Over Mad Archmage. Yeah, Castle of the Mad Archmage. And the thing that was cool is we went through like 8 little combats, and they were in a couple of hours. Like it was like 2 hours or 3 hours, and we did 8 fights. And most games these days with higher rules and options burden, you can't do that because each turn just takes too long. And because you got cool stuff to do, and there's a lot of options, and maybe you get some analysis paralysis, but there's a lot to do. But I was always impressed with how quickly you could get started with OSR. Roll 3d6 in order, choose a race, choose a class, first level, hit points, couple of needed items, and let's go kill things and take their stuff. And when I did my Delvers to Grow book for GURPS, my goal, which we accomplished, was I wanted character generation to be old school fast, right? I wanted to be able to have a valid GURPS character of almost any point value in 15 minutes or fewer. And we did that with walk-ups at a local gaming store who not only had never played GURPS in the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game before, they'd never role-played at all.
Really?
Yeah. So people would walk up, get told what to do. You say, oh, this sounds cool. Module. Can we play? Yes, you can. Let's go. And so it would take 5 people less than an hour to be ready to play. People who were vaguely familiar with role-playing were usually done in 10 to 15 minutes. And we have a computer support now. And I did... I averaged 1 character every 7 to 10 minutes, and I made like 35 pre-gens for the adventures that I ran at NordCon. So in a couple hours, I had literally a platoon of NPCs that people could choose from so that they could start playing right away. The goal was really, if your paper person dies, you won't miss more than 1 turn before Olaf Boarslayer II is ready to come play. But yeah, so old school. I don't want.
Well, this appeals to the. You have, like we were talking before the show.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that, especially OSE, have come from systems like 5e or 3e or Pathfinder, where it isn't necessarily that simple to start, and so this is a big change of pace for them. It's something new they've never experienced before. A lot of them they didn't play pre-2000. They don't know what it's like to roll up 3 characters or roll characters, 3 dice in order,
right,
blah blah, and then get started.
Right.
They're used to okay, I got this character, I got a plan to be an astral monodic mage.
Right.
So how do I plan on all my stuff? Oh, let me go to the computer. I got to enter it all on the computer so I can figure out exactly, and that's the great great draw for the older system.
And yet there is a learning curve. It's not a steep learning curve, but there is a learning curve, or in the case that you mentioned, an anti-learning curve. Unlearn what you have learned. Go all Yoda on it. And so there is a learning curve, and where the solo adventures fit the bill is it's a nice self-paced on-ramp that will get you going. And two of them, like the one that provides the cover art for the solo adventures, Dark Lord's Doom, is designed around a squad of basically 4 fighters in a military campaign. And it's kind of a choose your own adventure, if you remember those from the late 70s or through the 80s and 90s. Yeah,
wrote so many of those. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Well.
And but it's choose your own adventure supported by OSE rules. It's not just, wave your hands at the plot. You make a choice, and maybe the ground, like I was just editing something today, the ground rumbles, and in TFT you make an alertness check. In OSE you probably make a wisdom check because you want to force some skill rolls. You want some things to happen. And so you say, hey, roll under your wisdom, and if you do, you may go this direction, and if you don't, you may go a different direction. And then you go the different direction, and oh, look, here's a monster, and then you fight the monster, and it's, here's the stats, the OSE, here's a whatever it happens to be, and you fight it out, and if you win, then you go this pathway. If you run, maybe you get to go to a different paragraph, and if you die, well, you go to that same paragraph. It says, sorry, you're dead. And then you start again with either new characters or if you do make it through the entire entire adventure, there is some replay value. There are some places where you can make different choices, and then if you really want to play it, you can say, okay, instead of 4 characters, I'll take 3, or maybe I'll back 1 or 2 of them down to first level. Or you go through this thing and you're just getting the, you're Tim Shorts and you're rolling all 1s all the time, and you just get the floor wiped with you. So maybe you say, well, instead of 4 second level characters, you give yourself a couple of third level characters. So you can tune it until you're getting the challenge that you want, and in order to explore the adventure or not. But they are designed to be survivable, but not always easily. Dragon Hunt in particular, at least. Dragon Hunt was a funny story. I don't know if I think we probably told that. But in any case, the long story less long on that one is we started Dragon Hunt with a mighty hero will go on this Dragon Hunt, and just got the floor wiped with him, during the first playtest, and it's like, oh well, try 2 heroes. Okay, yeah, we made it through the first fight, and then we got killed by the giant wasps. Try all 3. All right, it took us 3 plays, but we made it.
Right.
So it was designed to be hard. That's this one. This is the TFT version. But yeah, so it's a great way of learning the game at your own pace, and you could have if you know someone who knows the game, they can be the referee and you manage the characters, or you could have each person play a character and have no referee or whatever. So, and I know one guy who takes the solos to conventions and runs them for, he'll run them, like everyone gets a character and he runs them just like a regular thing, but it's very guided, and it's in a convention setting. I think people are more willing to be constrained because they're you're there for 2 to 4 hours in one session, and so a little bit less hex crawl is not immediately jumped on as bad wrong fun.
Well, I mean, but solos are good for that. I mean, when Rachel and I were first dating, and she wanted to know what is this thing called Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs, I broke out Tunnels and Trolls. I think it was 7th edition rules, and I put it through a solo. but I read it, so it was kind of like DMing it. You can make some decisions that weren't quite covered by the page or the paragraphs, but it
Right.
gave her an idea of the the imagery, the dice rolling, and all that stuff. So when she went to her first North Texas, she wasn't totally a fish out of water. She had some basic idea aside from listening to my online games from the next room when I was playing with other folks, and she's like, "What the hell are they doing?" She had an idea. I think solo play is great for stuff like that. I'm dying to play the solo that came with the Call of Cthulhu starter set and the one from the RuneQuest starter set. I just need to set time down to do it, and I'm dying to. The worst solos I'm going to have to say are the Tunnels and Trolls solos, because they are never balanced for a character that can actually be a new character. They're all balanced for like a 250 point, Uber character, and never for the beginning character that you're going to probably have if you're going through a solo like this.
So that's interesting to me a little bit, because from that perspective, one of the things that you see in action adventure movies is there's the hero, right? And the hero, because they have to do all the roles, has to be good at everything, right? They're a pickpocket, and it's like James Bond, right? There's
Right.
nothing that he can't do. Mission Impossible, to stick with the modern thing, did feature the Tom Cruise superhero, but he had a team, and he always has a team. And that's more of a classic role-playing game stuff. If you don't mind, I do want to jump back because there were a couple questions that
Yeah.
came. The first is on the cover. I've never tried a detachable cover, although some of my more recent solos actually have maps on the inside covers. When I realized that Mixam will print on the inside of the cover for free in color, then that all of a sudden I got 2 extra pages that I could play with. In order to do that, I would probably have to contact them and say, please don't staple them together, but please do shrink wrap them. And there would probably be some discussion around that. But if they have a shrink wrap machine, I don't see why, with some additional cost, it wouldn't be possible. I know that there's somebody up there who apparently produced one. Yeah, there we go. Right, shrink wrap, and then people can look through it and decide if they want to buy it. But they can only look at the front and back covers, right? They can't page through it,
Right.
assuming that stores even let you page through. Detached cover not permissible media mail. Interesting. Yeah.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. That makes sense. That actually makes sense. It's funny. I without digressing too much, because then there's the how do you obscure, which actually has a funny answer. There was someone who's asking about media mail, and I was like, look, there is a very, very short list of things that are allowed to go by media mail. And then someone else chimes on and says, I've been shipping CDs by media mail for 10 years. It's a lie. You can do whatever you want. And then someone chimes on and says, no, I was a postmaster. Like, my role was like postmaster for West Coast. And Doug has it exactly right. While you may have gotten away with it,
Right.
it's not like it's a felony or anything. They return it to you and you have to pay for it, which will throw merry hell into your schedule. But it's you can only send very specific things via media mail. Catalogs, books.
No zines. I learned that.
What was that?
You can't send a zine.
But it also depends. I've been mailing stuff since 1994 because I've been buying, selling, and trading online since '94, and a lot of it comes down to what. First of all, there's a few factors. What does your postmaster personally allow? Because I was able to mail old magazines, because some people say old magazines are permissible. No, they're not, because they carry advertising in them. But if they're old, none of the advertising is useful. Blah blah blah. I've had them say yes and no to everything. Sometimes the same postmaster will tell me the same thing twice. So, but it depends on if it's open. If it's open in a central clearinghouse, it depends on what they believe is media mail, what isn't, and that's where
the post office reserves the right to open and search. any media mail package to validate the contents. Technically, I would never do this, of course, but if you put a business card or a Post-it note, thank you for buying this product, and you stick a Post-it note to the book, it's no longer media mail because it has a loose thing in it.
Wow.
If you put a business card, which I would never do, if you slide a business card in the book, it's no longer media mail. Whether or not Gaming Ballistic ever put.
It depends if that guy's had a bad day or not, too, right? I mean, I haven't caught enough people
right.
today. Well, this guy,
right.
yeah, I'd let this slide on a Tuesday,
right.
but now it's Friday.
But not today. If they're going to open it, they're going to look and see if it's valid, and if it doesn't, they're going to do it. So it's really just a matter of if they look, and if it sounds like, if you shake it up and it rattles, they're going to open it and send it back to you.
I just had a package that was opened up, because when you get it, it'll say, hey, this is opened by the post office, and usually it'll be taped really crappily. But I had a friend get one, and he said, wow, good thing they didn't look very far in the package. So I sent him a box, and inside the box, it was a board game, which is not media mail, but on top of the board game, there was a lot of books. So whoever opened it up saw the books and said, okay, this is all books, and apparently just closed it back up. So thank goodness he didn't search for it.
Or open it from the other side. That would have been interesting.
What they'll do is they'll send it to. They usually send it along. I've had this happen before, and they'll just charge you for the postage. They'll say, "Hey, we sent one of your packages along." They'll either make the person pay up who gets it, post on delivery or cash on delivery, or I've gotten notes to the post office for, "Hey, we delivered some of yours, but it turned out it really wasn't media mail, so you owe us an extra $10."
Right, then they'll charge you exactly. So, but yeah, so I mean, mail aside, and then there was one more question about obscuring the path. The solos that I have from David Pulver and the solos that I would write will not have a path. They have multiple paths with multiple endings. You have good ends, you have bad ends. Like till the preview that I sent to Eric because one of the 4 is done.
Right.
The preview that I sent to Eric has a couple lots of ways to get killed and eaten. At least one way where the bride, you're supposed to escort a nobleman's daughter to an allied, a rival barony, so that there can be a marriage, and the two baronies will ally and face off the orc invasion, because there's always got to be an orc invasion, right? But there's at least one ending where you do that and it's successful. There's another ending where you do that. Actually, I had to edit and rewrite that a little bit because it was a little bit there was a little bit of flavor to one of those endings that was a little needed a little help for a modern audience. But in any case, there's a couple where you deliver it and the bride is miserable because the groom has discovered something and written off the wedding as it's a political alliance, but it's a bad idea. And there's at least one solution where you can steal the bride and go off and make merry little adventurers together. And there's a couple other endings as well. So one of the tricks there is don't have a path. Have multiple possible endings and multiple victory conditions. I mean, getting killed and eaten is pretty much the loser condition in most of those. But you can also show up and the Baron is like, wow, you brought my bride in like almost 2 pieces. This is not cool. Get out of here and be lucky I don't, flay you to death or whatever. Right. So I think the trick there is, much like a normal campaign, people will always chafe at a pathway that really sort of eases in and out from a central road, right? This is not somewhere where you're going from, Minneapolis to Dallas, and maybe you take a little detour, but pretty much you're on 35 east south the entire frickin' 1,000 miles, right? And you know it and you expect it, you do it. That's not usually why you play role-playing games, and it's not why you play solo adventures. So yeah, multiple victory and multiple defeat conditions is kind of how you do it. One of the innovations that, at least I think it was an innovation, but one of the things that David brings to it was the concept of plot words. where if you do certain things or make certain choices, you get a plot word like evisceration or something. And if you get to plot where you get to a choice, if you get to a choice, you say, if you have plot word evisceration, go to paragraph 1, 2, 3. Or if you have plot word evisceration, you make this ability check at -4 or +4 or whatever it is. And then other plot words get you experience points for problem solving. So
nice.
there's right. So you can beat the monsters and that gives you experience points, but you can also solve a problem and you get a plot word which gives you 50 or 100 XP.
So Dandelion Games wants to know: do you turn to page XXX, or using some other form of cipher on the same page?
It's coded paragraphs. So it's a paragraph based thing. And Eric, do you have the sample page that I sent? Let me drop you something that you could put up on the screen.
Well, hold on a second. I might.
Yeah, I haven't. Do look, but I have a new one because someone was like, "Is this D&D or is this not D&D?" And I'm like, "That's a darn good question. Let me give you a good answer." That's not it. That is it. Yeah, open. Okay, so I just sent you something in chat.
All right. Let me remove the extra screen here.
Yeah. So in any case, it's coded paragraphs, and the way that somebody, so one of the first solos was So the Menser style CY choose your own adventure. That's exactly right. The Fantasy Trip has been doing branching paragraph solo adventures almost since the beginning. The first one was called Death Test, I believe, and there's been others. But someone along the way, and I think David uses this, created a paragraph mixer app. So you write it as linearly as you want, string them together, and then say go, and it randomizes the paragraphs so that So this is on the screen. You can see some of the paragraphs. You see the stat block. You see one of the maps. And some of the choices that you might make.
So that's cool. And I've always liked the solos. I used to love the solo books, not the Endless Quest books. I used to love the Tunnels and Trolls, the fighting fantasy books, because it wasn't just to pick your own adventure. The Middle Earth ones that came out from ICE were iffy, but at least there was a stripped down version of Mercs. But always the idea that there was some random chance to achieve your goal, as opposed to just having some I don't know whether you chose right or left made the difference, was to me huge. It
Right.
made it more like role playing.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did in one of my GURPS adventures, let's see if I can find it. It's in Forest's End. So this guy here. But there's a thing where the village, the settlement that you're visiting, or a lot of the here it is, it gets invaded. And when it was given to me by the author, it said, it said some stuff, and I was like, yeah, I think that we can do better than this. So what I did was I said, okay, you start off in the center of the village, and you've got the bad guys coming in, and there's like these 6 or 7 challenges that are happening at the same time, and the players roll on some tables, or they choose to go wherever, and while they're doing any one thing, other things happen, and you need to check whether or not any of the nobles, that are the important NPCs, get killed.
Right.
Or if you choose to go fight the big lizard thing, does the schoolhouse get overrun and the children kidnapped, killed, or eaten, or whatever. So it's a dynamic, evolving situation that involves table die rolls. And my understanding is that there are some solos. Maybe it's Tunnels and Trolls. But anyway, there's some solos that are kind of generated that way, where you roll some dice and you go do an encounter, something else happens. And from my perspective, if I were going to write a solo adventure, it would probably be more like that, because that's more how my mind works than Branching Path. So I have no problem with what David's done here. They're brilliant and they're great.
Right.
And I've played one with my Vampire Hunter Belladonna with my daughter, and she has had a lot of fun. But I see multiple ways to enable this, where you've got maybe you've got a couple of victory tracks, and the bad guy's victory tracks can move at the same time as your victory track, and whoever gets the victory conditions first wins. But there are other sort of not just point goals, right? There are important characters that you may have needed to interact with in the future that you can no longer. So there's all kinds of ways to do solos, and I think in the future, especially with the old school stuff, I'm looking forward to doing them, because I have planned. It's not like I don't have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of what I think is really cool setting material that, in a very real way, would be differently awesome in an OSE setting. Right. So what I would really like to do is take my Viking setting and blow it up a little bit, so that there's much more Viking, like the actual raiding between neighboring kingdoms in my Viking setting, because there's probably not as much of that as there really should have been. But early on in my setting development, I decided that this Viking kingdom, Nordland, would basically be a proxy from Minnesota, where I live. Because we've got Vikings, except they don't win much of anything. They don't conquer much. But we've got a lot of Scandinavians, and so it seemed appropriate. But in any case, what I kind of want to do is I've got a couple of ideas for that world, but in a TFT OSE, old school rules light, life is cheap, play hard sort of way, where the gods aren't quite there, and whatever. Is Graph Paper Architect? Is he wearing chainmail on his left? That looks like a HEMA jacket. You and I may need to talk. I'm putting on my chainmail tomorrow. Yeah. So long story less long is next year may be quite interesting. From if my foray into old school publishing is well received.
Well, it's funny because, when we think of, I don't know, old school solos, we always think Tunnels and Trolls, because Tunnels and Trolls was the system that was basically written to run solos. That's what they published initially. They didn't really publish adventures that were GM adventures. But, oh God, I want to say Elvis Costello, but it's the wrong. There was a Costello that wrote solo adventures. I forget for which third party, for AD&D, and I have at least one of them. It was very well done. It was survivable. First time I'd actually played a D&D solo. And then you had the GURPS Conan solos,
okay,
which I think a lot of people forget, but I enjoyed playing the shit out of them back when I could actually parse GURPS. I'd probably have to relearn all the rules at this point. But solos are fun if they are what you expect from it. I mean, the problem with Tunnels and Trolls solos is that they're often funhouse adventures, which can be fine and fun, but when every adventure seems like it's a random funhouse, it loses the excitement. The Conan ones were great because they were telling a bit of a story as the adventure went on. Your stuff sounds like it's going to have different story endings depending on how it all plays out, which again is great. And the different story endings with success at variable levels. Tunnels and Trolls Adventures, I'll be honest, I never played one to the end without cheating, because you could not play one to the end without without cheating.
Yeah.
It just was not possible. Fighting fantasy, you could maybe get to the end if you got really really lucky. But yeah, TNT stuff uh, was frustrating unless you cheated. And I don't know, maybe the assumption was from Kent and Andre that all my players are going to cheat, so I might as well make it hard. I don't know.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough, huh?
Yeah, you know. I pick my dead body up off the ground and move on to the next encounter like I won. So, but yeah, I do think now. I mean, I think like Mike in the current Humble Bundle, isn't there some solos from Pacer games? The Barshes.
I do not know this.
I think there are.
Could be. I'll check.
Which
I know there's some center stuff, but I'm not sure if.
And I know there are some releases on drive-through that are like, I don't know, we've seen like Game Master emulators to allow you to pretty much turn anything into a solo kind of. I think I've picked up some of the PDFs. I don't think I've actually read them because it's like, oh my god, 400 pages, this is too much DM advice for me. But I do like the idea of a solo, whether you're playing it as a solo person or you're playing it with your spouse or with your child, because it allows you to kind of experience a story together that isn't really totally prescripted, that it can go in different ways, which I think is fun. And I think that's, it's something that our industry has often been lacking. So, especially since computers, right? Computers took away a lot of this desire for a while of solo adventuring.
Yeah, because you could just play. Yeah, you could just hook up your Xbox and jump into Skyrim, and you're playing a solo adventure, basically, right? I mean, that's
right.
That's what most computer games are. They're at their heart, they're a solo adventure. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I recently played a solo. I went to my annual trip to South Padre Island last year. I brought a couple of the Call of Cthulhu, because Call of Cthulhu has 3 or 4 solos. Actually, they have 4 or 5. They have Against the Dark, Against the Cold, Against the Tide, Evil Tide, whatever. And so, yeah, I would sit down if I was. My wife does a game, so I would pull out the Against the Tide one, and I'd roll up a character. Or I'd use the character in the book, and I would zip along and either go insane or a couple times I beat the monsters. Most times I perished horribly. But yeah, there's a time and a place for that stuff, definitely.
I think we've reached a point. Well, we're seeing this with the OSR, right? Like 5e players are coming to OSE and they're liking it because it's a little bit more stripped down. It's a bit more simple, but still gives you that full role playing experience. And I think that a lot of people now are saying, you know what, I don't necessarily want to play a game on my computer. I want to actually kind of get more of an experience of rolling the dice and having an adventure. And I think that maybe we're I don't say going backwards, because that sounds like the wrong thing, but we're re-experiencing some of the past. The past is becoming new again.
Well,
I like that.
As simple as we were talking about earlier about, a lot of people are coming from Pace or Pathfinder and 5e into OSE because it's a lot easier. Well, you got to think a lot of these people, maybe they were born in 2000, or maybe they just started, they really started playing role-playing games past 2000. They don't know what it's like to pick up a book and just play an adventure. And we had, I went through the fantasy trip stuff back in the early 80s. I mean, I knew that stuff was there. We had the Rose Estes, Endless Quest. I mean, for those who don't know, the 80s was a huge boom of choose your own adventure books. You had oh my gosh, you had the Steve Jackson ones from England. That series went about 50 or 60 titles. So those are actually really good too. Those were great. You had the Endless Quest. You had like 4 or 5 Endless Quests. Actually, TSR didn't just have one Endless Quest series. They had 3 or 4. They had one that had a little character card in them. Those are actually really hard to find now, but they had 3 or 4. There was a bunch of smaller companies that threw their hat in the ring. Obviously there was the Choose Your Adventure, books a lot of those were really written for smaller kids. So we grew up with that stuff. We grew up with, okay, it's cool. Yeah, you can have a solo adventure. You pick up all these books. That really fell out of vogue, right? I mean, late 90s. Actually, all the 90s. I don't remember anything coming out. I guess they kind of killed the whole concept eventually because there was so many of those choose your adventure, pick a path, endless quest, whatever you want to call them.
Well, the TSR also had the Invisible Ink adventures, right? The ones that you could only play once. There was once you revealed the Invisible Ink. It was
right. Oh, God, I do remember that.
Yeah, there was the Minotaur one and the Blizzard one. Yeah, M1 and M2. But they also had some. They had some regular solos. They had the Ghost of Lion Castle, right? That was B something, B0. I don't remember. It was Ghost of Lion Castle. They had a few solo. I get the impression they were never very, very popular, which is weird because you think there were in the 80s. There was a lot of these poor kids that were stuck places where they couldn't get a group to play together. It seemed like that would have been a great idea to have more of those. But there's really only maybe two or three of those. And because I think they were trying to promote D&D as more of a group activity. They really didn't want you to sit and play an adventure by yourself. And so that's why you had the Endless Quest books. The Endless Quest books were enormously successful. If you read John Peterson's The Game Wizards, there's a small section he doesn't elaborate on. And I asked about it personally. And even John Peterson didn't know the answer to this. But apparently at one point, Rose Estes was making so much money that they were shorting her payments on those, and she sued them. She went to court and sued them because they were not paying her all the money. I mean, she's making bucks on those Endless Quest books because they were selling so well. Though some of those Endless Quest, especially the first 5 or 6, went into 5, 6, 7, 8 printings. I mean, they were doing really. So that was a huge time for those kind of pick your path or choose your adventures in the 80s, but that definitely fell off the next 20, 30 years after that. And then, so now people are just finding out hey, this is cool. Hold on. I can have a solo adventure, that I don't have to hook in the computer. I mean, it's new. It's something new and cool for these people.
Yeah, I remember there was, I think there's at least 1 or 2 Gamma World Endless Quest books. There might have been a top secret. And I mean, they were certainly using all of their.
There's a couple of Conans. There's a couple of Tarzans. There's a couple of few Ravenloft ones. I've got the whole series is 36 books long, and I have them all. I haven't played them all, but I have them all. But they weren't, like I said, they weren't the only company. There was tons of companies, and some of those, it's crazy. The collector in me. I mean, some of those choose your adventure books go for triple digits on eBay and stuff because when the series would get down toward the end of the series, they would print less and less and less of them. And so obviously when the nostalgic, like for instance, the Steve Jackson games ones, those are really beautiful. I don't know if you ever saw them. The UK version is really nice. Now they reprinted them in American versions also. And I think the American versions, only went up to about issue 20 or something. I can't remember, but the UK series continued to 60 or 70.
And now, is this because there are 2 Steve Jacksons, one from the UK, one from the US. You're talking about the other one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the UK Steve Jackson, not American Steve Jackson. He and Ian Livingston did it wasn't Choose Your Adventure. What were they called? Fighting Fantasy. And so those are really fun because, you had you had your little character sheet and they were a little more imaginative, I think. Now, there's also, for those who don't remember, there's a series called Lone Wolf. And Lone Wolf was really popular.
Lone Wolf was really good, yes.
It was a UK series they translated to American, but the later issues the later books were hard to find, and some of those late issue Fighting Fantasy and Lone Wolves go for $200-300 a piece now. But yeah, it was you could hardly go in the store. I remember my youngest brother was the exact perfect age for those books in the 80s. And it was a corner. We used to go in the bookstore. There was like a whole section. That's all it was those kind of books. And he grabbed one of these.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. There was a whole wall of choose your own adventures in the library.
Yeah,
I don't mean the library. The Walden books. Walden books. Yeah, date ourselves. Back when Walden books existed.
All those good books. Yeah, B. Dalton and Walden and all those guys. But
yeah, I had first was a B. Dalton. You know, that's
But there's a whole history of those, and that was just a big phenomenon growing up. And then, like we said before, like during the '90s, I don't remember anything like that coming out, and not, obviously not during the aughts either. Not until recently, when it kind of started crawling back a little bit. There was a little nostalgia, I think, going on there for some people, and they were thinking, "Hey, this is." But video games might have taken a big part of that, because video games weren't a big deal in the '80s. And once video games came along, hey, I can sit here and play Baldur's Gate. That's basically like a solo adventure. Well, why am I getting a book and having to read all these pages? That's so hard. Oh, reading pages, ouch. Well, let's just play Baldur's Gate or play one of the Gold Box series, and that was kind of like your own solo adventure.
Well, I think Endless Quest books and the Gold Box series could coexist, because it wasn't really getting you, like, you had to do a lot of like immerse yourself into the Gold Box. Once you got Baldur's Gate, you got the voices, and you had like the ranger going boo, with his
go for the eyes, boo.
Open your eyes, go for the eyes, boo. Go for the eyes, yes, stuff like that. It changed a lot of the expectations of what you were going to get from a computer game, and I think what you're going to get from solo play. And the Baldur's Gate stuff was more story-oriented than, say, the Ultima series, which was a very much open world where you can wander around and accomplish nothing.
So let me throw down something and see what you think about this. So I have found that every now and then, maybe more frequently than I'd like, I get a submission from somebody, and they're like, "Oh, here's my role-playing game adventure," and you read through this, and it's like, okay, you're telling a story, and the PCs are mostly spectators. I think that for scripted stuff that would usually get brutalized in a casual game review,
right.
A solo adventure, a branch path solo, is a perfect choice to straddle the line between go play this in your own campaign and make it your own with player agency and change the world, and I'm writing a novel. Because I feel like there's a lot of would-be novelists I have this great idea, and I bet people will want to see this story unfold, rather than I want people to be immersed in a situation that they will alter. I tend to really lean hard on that so that you can move an adventure to your own campaign if you need to.
Right.
But yeah, so I actually think that for people who are like, "Oh, I have this cool story," as long as you're willing to go off in a few branches from that, and solo adventures are hard to write, but if you're want to straddle that gap between I'm writing a novel versus I'm doing a RPG module that borders on hexcrawl, a solo is a great way to do it, but it's a skill. It's hard.
Oh, I'm sure it is, and yes, there are people who write adventures. Very rarely do they get published, but they write adventures that they want to tell a story, and the player's actions are probably inconsequential to the ending. I one of the first things I reviewed when I was a blogger, and they made me a featured reviewer on Drive-Thru or RPG Now, whichever it was at the time, was horrible adventure where if you went off the path, these intelligent balls of lightning would zap you for 2d6 damage to make sure you did not stray off of the predetermined adventure. There was only one way it was going to go. It was beyond a railroad. And when I reviewed it, I got very strong pushback by the person who wrote it, who used some 4-letter words to describe my review.
Somebody said 4-letter words to you. That's insane. That never happens.
Yeah, 4-letter. My vocabulary only goes up to 5 or 6, so they were pushing the envelope. But yeah, and it was like, because they weren't writing an RPG adventure, they were telling their story, which you're supposed to experience.
Right.
Now, when you're coming to a solo adventure, the idea when you're coming into it as a player is um, this isn't an infinite amount of possibilities because that's impossible. It's almost like solo adventures to me are almost like playing Zork back in the day, and I love Zork. I just hated trying to figure out which words worked.
Right. Sure. Right.
But I loved it because it told a great story. But you knew that your decisions were going to be one of two, one of three. It
Right.
wasn't going to be like an average RPG session where you can fuck your GM and say, "Well, I know you thought I was going to do A or B, but I'm going to do Z," and you guys are like going out. I had
Now
no
what do
idea.
we do?
I
Sure.
didn't expect you guys to go into the sewers. Now I got to make this up on the fly. We understand that when we come into a solo adventure that there are limited path options, but at least we know the options have an impact on how the story is going to play out. Again, as Doug was saying, you don't want a story that has just one central path and you wiggle around that central path.
Yeah.
It has to be able to actually have branches that make a difference, and I think uh, that's what changes it to a large extent. By the way, um, question for Doug: could you give a summary of each of your 4 solo adventures, and why did you choose to write these? But you didn't choose. You didn't write them.
Yeah, right. So that's the first thing is I was the cheerleader and the publisher, not the author. David Pulver, Big Eyes Small Mouth. He's done some OSR stuff. Tower of the Moon. He did for Swords and Wizardry. He wrote GURPS Vehicles. Very prolific multi-system writer. Um, so let's sort of go in order a little bit, which is when I got into TFT because Steve Jackson asked me to. We were having a business meeting at Gamehole Con, Eric, where we met.
Yep.
And I was like, "Hey, I've been doing a couple of these books for GURPS, and I'm having fun. Is there anything else?" He's like, "Yeah, will you be a third-party publisher for TFT?" And I'm like, "Well, the first time I'd ever played TFT was 2 hours ago, because I missed it. Right, that wasn't part of my gaming experience when I was younger."
Right.
And so I was like, "Well, let me think about that, because if I do it, I don't want to do it poorly, right? I don't want to do something and not honor the brand, and respect the players of these games." So I went away and I reached out to some people, one of whom was David Pulver, to and the other was a team of Christopher Rice and J. Edward Tremlett, and said, "Hey, you guys have written and submitted or accepted stuff for SJ Games. Would you consider writing for Gaming Ballistic?" And they came back and said, "Sure." And I said, "Hey, give me some ideas. Give me 5 ideas each, and I'll pick a couple of them and pitch them to Steve Jackson Games. Let them choose, and then we'll do that." And so I said, "Okay." And I think they each overachieved, and maybe I had asked for 4, and they each gave me 5. And I went to Steve Jackson Games and said, "Okay, which of these do you want?" And they said, "Yes." What do you mean, yes? They're like, "Yes, yes, do those." And so anyway, I started with 4 Perilous Journeys, which was 2 by Christopher and J. Edward Tremlett, and the other 2 by David. But I mispriced them. They were too expensive for the bundle.
Right.
And people were like, value's not going to be there. You've never done this before, whatever. And I'm like, I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? They're right.
And
They're right.
I'm going to interject. Now, that's a rarity for any publisher to get feedback and say, "Oh, am I overpricing?" Because people that I've spoken to that I have kind of maybe said maybe you're overpricing something have usually given me this as a reaction.
Uh,
That's usually the response you get. Like,
yeah.
but
So yeah.
consumers kind of have an idea.
Yeah, so I was looking at it and I'm like, looking at existing product and blah blah blah, I don't think that what I'm offering here is attractive to a Kickstarter backer. So I went to David and I said, David, you've done solos before. Would you do one for me? And can you do one for me right now for this Kickstarter and deliver it without altering the deadline of the Kickstarter? So no small ask, but he had already turned in his 2 modules. And one of them was this one called Iron Skull Castle, which is kind of a micro setting. And he said, well, there's a character in Iron Skull Castle, name of Belladonna, and she's a maid, but I have this backstory in my mind. Does it actually say it? But I have this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So she's got a backstory there, but she's a vampire slayer. Like she has this tragic backstory because, of course, there's a tragic backstory. There's got to be a tragic. But she's a maid, works for this powerful noblewoman. And why don't we do a solo adventure that's basically a vampire hunt? And I'm like, that's awesome, right? And so so that's where Vampire Hunter Belladonna came on there, and that font is called Rebuffed, and because if you want to call it Vampire Hunter B, that's fine, and a little tribute to Buffy the Vampire Slayer there. But anyway, so I added at no extra charge the solo to the package. So it's crossed it out, and I said, okay, 5 perilous journeys. And then the Kickstarter started to do well, and then I became aware of a couple of places that would make these decks of Destiny cards, and as well as counters, punch-out counters. And was that one? Anyway, maybe it wasn't. I may be confusing myself. Long story less long, Vampire Hunter Belladonna is about the maid of a powerful noblewoman who moonlights as a vampire slayer in order to avenge herself and make up for her tragic past and blah, blah, blah. And so that's the point on that one. And that one actually made that Kickstarter start to really take off. And so that was the first solo that we did. And then when I did more Perilous Journeys, the next Kickstarter, I was like, David, let's do more solos, because people really liked the solos. And, some of the reviews that came in was like, best solo I've ever played for Vampire Hunter Belladonna and whatever. So I was like, let's do more. And he's like, I kind of want to do a military tale, like battles and stuff. And I was like, that sounds great. And then he's like, but I also want, people are always doing these little skirmish things. Let's send some really epic heroes against some of the baddest dragons and monsters that the fantasy trip has to offer. And so that's where Dark Lord's Doom, which is the tale of a squad of a sub squad of 4 fighters, who are sent off to the hinterlands, and get to eventually confront the Dark Lord, and whether it's the doom falls on the players or the doom falls, but it's basically a set of military engagements, skirmishes and stuff like that. Dragon Hunt is a branch path that you fight a lot of dragons, but it's not just dragons, and there's some other stuff to it. But this was the one that we found was so hard that if you didn't take all 3, call it 9th level characters or 10th level characters, you just got the floor wiped with you.
Nice.
It just, the
first control solo. All right.
The first with one character, the first introductory cakewalk fight just crushed, just like boom boom dead. Your wasp food or whatever. So that was Dark Lord's Doom, and then David and I communicate on a regular basis, and what we're doing is building, and we're gonna I don't want to make an announcement, but I'm going to make an announcement.
Uh-oh.
He and I have agreed to populate so Dark Lord's Doom, Vampire Hunter Belladonna, Dragon Hunt, Iron Skull Castle, and to some extent, Till Death Do Us Part. And Till Death Do Us Part was a blatant. Let's see if we can make an escort mission not suck.
Well, they usually do suck, but if you did,
right. But so let's see if we can make this. Let's see if we can make it not suck. And I think we achieved it. It was fun. But because of the constraints involved in a solo adventure, because of the constraints, it works a lot better than take the poor NPC from place to place and you have all of these options, and why would I go from place to place and whatever. But within the context of the solo adventure, it really works. And so that's the 4 solos that we wrote for TFT, and converting them to old school essentials it became a natural fit. And I think and so then I'm like, yeah, I think I may do this. And then Gavin Norman from Necrotic Gnome reaches out to me and says, hey, someone pointed me towards your weekly ballistics update. Are you going to enter this space? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, that's really great and whatever. And so he was very, very supportive of the effort. And, he introduced me to the people at Exalted Funeral who handle his hardcover books. And that's why we're able to offer these starter kits.
Okay.
Right. So you get the 4 solos, but if you kind of want to play, but you don't have the stuff, he's offering the rules tome PDF. And Exalted Funeral allocated 100 books in the U.S. and 50 in the U.K. For me to use as shipping hubs. And actually originally it was 50 in the U.S. It was also 50 in the U.K., but I made a mistake there. Once you change something in your Kickstarter rewards, they will not let you change it back. And I accidentally increased the quantity on the UK hub from 50 to 100, but it's got 8 backers right now, so I'm not too worried that I'm going to overrun mine. But the US starter set,
48
is almost full. Yeah, it's almost full. What, 48? Yeah, so it's actually picked up a couple since I looked at it earlier. So it would have been 2 away from filling up the original 50. But I reached out to Kristen. I said, "Do you have 50 more?" And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely." So now that one's to 100. And we're not half done with the project yet. I mean, it only launched a week ago. A week ago tomorrow, and it goes to the 27th. So we still have another 17 days left in the project. So I mean, we could potentially push right up to that 100 starter kits, which is, I mean, it's fantastic for all kinds of reasons. Interestingly enough, I don't make much extra money on that. Between when Kickstarter takes their cut and you buy them retail from Exalted Funeral, and there's a few other allocations of funds there. But I want people to be able to say, I've never played OSE and I'd like to. Let me start on your solos, and boom, 1 click and you're done.
Right, and we're going to come back to you. And by the way, your UK is at 9, so
yeah, I got plenty to go before I get to 50.
And folks, we haven't said this yet, and I probably should have. At the bottom of your screen, when I'm not putting up comments, there is a link. It's tenkars-tavern.games/OSE-solo. That'll take you right to the Kickstarter. You don't have to do a search for it. You don't got to look it up. It's right there. I think I can also throw it into the comment section if it's still highlighted. Yes, it is. I'll throw it into the comment section. So that's the easiest way to get there. And for folks who are paying attention at home, listen, that blue means that I am a backer. I'm a backer for $50. I'm a backer for print plus PDF. Why print plus PDF? Because I'll likely play it from the print, but if I reread it, it's going to be from the PDF, because once I play something, it goes on the shelf, never to be seen or touched again. But the PDFs are always on my iPad. That's why I love print plus PDF.
And I will say this, the usual way that I price bundles is in retail is you buy the book, you get the PDF for half off, right? So the retail value of the bundle is $90 or $110 or something like that, because of the different But I wasn't looking. Maybe I should have. Maybe people would have paid. But I figured since the development cost of these was basically sunk, it's my time.
Right.
To the I have the art, I have the words, I have to do the conversion. David did the conversion of Till Death Do Us Part as part of the writing. So I'm going to convert these next 3, and then we'll get some playtesting done. But because the development costs were already there, I was like, I feel like to get into this space and to make it attractive, I was going to deeply discount the bundle of 4 solos and stuff. So it's the $10 single PDF is hardly discounted at all over the least expensive of the 4. But again, the buy all 4 PDFs is roughly 50% off, and 4 print plus 4 PDFs is roughly 50% off. It's basically the same as a retail discount. And if you happen to be a retailer, there's a 3 each physical only for at a 50% retail discount. So do you mind if I say a word about logistics?
Yeah, no, definitely. Please.
So the way that I'm doing this is the same way that I did Till Death, and that was a project that really only took me a month from end of campaign to backer kit to total fulfillment. And really what that's going to be is I'm going to do the printing of these 4 books in both the United States and the United Kingdom. And the U.S. stuff, well, depending on how well it does, I may need to find a fulfillment partner to help me out with this, but it's probably going to come to me. The 50 or 100 U.S. books, hardcovers, will come to me. And I'll get them printed here and then pack them up and send them out. But right now, Mixam is running like a 10 to 14 day order to deliver cycle. So what I'll probably do is the Kickstarter will end. I'll let credit cards clear. I'll start the backer kit cycle. I'm doing 2-wave shipping, which means that you'll get any add-ons, and there's only going to be a couple add-ons. Some of my old 5e, like Dragon Heresy hardback, Lost Hall of Tyr adventure for 5e, and I may even put up the limited stock of 6 or 8 Lost Hall of Tyr first edition, because that was a convention adventure that's about 64 pages, but it's got Swords and Wizardry stats in it. That's way back in 2017. But I also have Dungeon Grappling, which I won't talk about. But
listen, folks, if you have ever played AD&D, D&D, especially AD&D, and looked at the overbearing rules, the fucking grappling rules, you looked at that and you said, who was smoking what when they decided to go along with this in the DMG? You will find Dungeon Grappling, and it is written for any D20 system. You can take it and you can put it in your OSE, your Swords and Wizardry, your 5e. Doesn't make a fucking difference. But guess what? It'll make this shit work. Oh my God! Listen, this and Black Marsh from Rob Conley are probably the 2 books that I would need in my RPG collection before anything else aside from a core book, because Doug will give you unarmed combat that actually is bearable and makes sense, and Rob gives you an amazing sandbox setting. These, oh my God! When it comes to OSR stuff, third party, this is what you should be looking at. These are the releases. Sorry, did I say enough? Did I? Oh
no, that was kind of awesome.
Okay.
I put a link for Dungeon Grappling into the chat just for fun. But in any case, but for the United States, Canada, and interestingly enough, Australia, New Zealand will come out of the U.S. because I have somebody who's backed all of my Kickstarters, I think, from Australia, and he and I struck up a conversation, and he has a freight forwarder. So what I do now is I take the stuff that's going to Australia and New Zealand, I put it in one shipment. It goes to him. He breaks it up and reships it. And instead of $50 minimum, it was $16 to
What?
Australia and $20
Very
to
good.
New Zealand.
Very smart. Yes.
So with a little bit of help from our friends, we can all sing the song. I managed to cut shipping to Australia and New Zealand by a lot. And now for the now Canada comes out of the U.S. because it used to be cheaper to send by Royal Mail, but
Right.
both DHL and UPS, I haven't done FedEx yet, but I'm going to assume it's the same. Hold hostage packages with brokerage fees. So they charge $15 from me to UPS something to Canada, but they'll charge the backer 40 to 70 Canadian dollars to process through customs. Well, that's a $7 charge USPS.
Oh, well.
And you can reverse it and pay it up front in most cases, which I do. So I include that in shipping. It's a little bit more than what you'd see on the top line UPS, but those brokerage fees don't exist. And so Canada comes out of here as well. For the UK, EU, non-EU Europe, and rest of world, it comes out of GamesQuest in the United Kingdom. Mix and prints it in a couple of days. It takes like 2 days to get to GamesQuest. And then they book it. It usually takes about a week to book in because they're a big company and they're big. And then it goes into Royal Mail and poof. So that's how I handle the logistics in a way that doesn't involve a lot of overseas staging, even though there is overseas shipping.
Okay.
And there's a Kickstarter update that, past performance is no guarantee of future shipping rates. But the other thing that I'm doing is 2-wave backer kit shipping. It's a beta that they have where you finish the project, you go into the back. Oh, that's the thing. I can basically, it allows me to launch the backer kit survey like a day or two after the campaign ends, because I don't have to do all the work to figure out shipping rates until the PDFs are in your hands and you said, oh, I play tested this and you spelled this wrong and I'd really like to see this in a different style. And, I think this would be better with 4 wolves rather than 3, or 4 wolves rather than 5, or whatever. And so you tweak it out, you get all that nailed, and then I can get shipping right then. And I think I will be within a couple of dollars of complete pass-through, neither overcharge or undercharge on Till Death, because I was able to assess the shipping rates, knowing exactly where and how many I was sending to, because people had done their surveys.
Right.
Whereas if you try and assess shipping rate just with the hand wavy data that you get from Kickstarter, you can't do it. It's a crapshoot, and you're gonna be wrong.
Really?
I find it so, but
Eric and I talk about that all the time, Doug. That if you look at failed Kickstarters, most or ones that don't do as good as they're supposed to, almost every time it's because they have underestimated shipping costs, and especially international shipping. International shipping will kill you, and right. We don't see it as much as we used to, but there used to be this phenomena where they would say, okay, shipping anywhere in the world for $60. And by the time that they get their Kickstarter finished and everything's ready to ship, well, guess what? Flat rate international shipping anywhere in the world was $75. Now you're losing $15 in every package, and it just got worse and worse from there. So that is something that really trips up newcomers to Kickstarters too.
And the biggest thing that people, so there's just as general rah community building, there are really effectively like 4 parts to shipping. And you need to make sure that you are honest with yourself and honest with your backers about all 4. And I don't mean in a lie kind of way. It's don't eat it. Be straight with your people. Don't eat it. The first, and it used to be you could eat this, but is what I call staging, right? Because the books don't magically appear on your front step or your fulfillment partner's step. They have to be printed and shipped there. And it used to be that doing that and getting it to wherever it is that we're going was relatively inexpensive, usually less than $1 per book. It was remarkably less expensive if you were shipping 500 or 1,000 books from, say, Eastern Europe, where like I do my large print runs overseas across the Atlantic to New York or wherever it is that they come from, and then to me that used to cost like $500 or $600. So for 1,000 books, you're talking 60 cents a book. Who cares? Now it's like $3,000. So for like a 500 book print run, you're looking at $6 a book. You can't necessarily just eat that.
No.
Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but that needs to be an informed choice. So
Right,
there's
it has to be
go ahead.
built into your budget. And I mean, I used
Right.
to see, like Mike was saying, there were people. I'm not going to mention who these Kickstarter project managers were because I don't need to embarrass them. But they were doing things like flat rate shipping anywhere in the world, $15,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
maybe U.S. shipping was costing them $8, but shipping to Europe was costing them $50. And you can't. First off, why should I be subsidizing shipping for somebody else? But secondly, what usually happens then is that you got a lot more overseas orders than a normal Kickstarter would because
Right.
the
Mhm.
reduced shipping, and that means that oh my God, it didn't bounce. And we look at things like what was it, a Myth and Magic, the infamous Kickstarter that had probably 1,000 books printed and never shipped because shipping was built into the price of the book when you bought it, and then shipping costs double before it even, was able.
Who just got hammered with that? We just had a big story about that the other day, and I'm drawing a blank
Oh my
on it.
God, somebody, yeah, some company out there, and I should know.
We did a whole thing on it.
They are
Oh,
kind of holding a project hostage for more money to ship.
yes.
If
Dang
you want
it.
your
I can't
project,
believe-
if you want your rewards to ship now, send us more money.
Dark
If you're
Dungeon?
willing
No.
to wait, well, then you'll get it when you get it when we get more money.
Was it Darkest
Did you
Dungeon?
say?
Yes,
I think
there
it was
you go.
Darkest Dungeon. The Darkest
Yes,
Dungeon Kickstarter.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
and-
hey, we get to keep your money, or you can send us more money, or we're just going to keep your money anyway.
and you gotta feel
They're not
so.
gonna
I
refund
got a note. I eat these synthetic noodles called Vita ramen, which is a high protein noodle that's flavored and it's organic and cholesterol free. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, but they sent out a note today that in this year alone, both their raw materials, manufacturing, and shipping costs have gone up 60%.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a fencing mask, a HEMA mask for sword fighting, that took almost a year to get to me because China just said we're not making complicated masks anymore, and I don't care if we have a contract and I don't care if we have an agreement. We're making the simple masks, and anyone who places orders for the complex ones can go screw themselves. And so the person who I purchased it from in France calls me during the day and says, "Look, let me walk you through this, and how can we make this right?" Because I had been sending emails, like, I finally got caught up on this stuff. We'll credit you back what you spent, and let's give you one of our simple masks. It's good stuff, whatever. It's great, and I love it. But the costs over the last year or so are absolutely insane, and they're insane in a way that anyone who can avoid charging until the last minute should do so. Actually, who was I just talking to? Glenn Seal from Monkey Blood. He and I are collaborating. Here's another stealth announcement. So these cards that I make for the fantasy trip,
Right.
I'm probably going to do a deck of 160 creature NPC cards for the solos as well. So when you get to a monster, you can put the card down. I've been very pleased with my local vendor and cards there, and so that'll probably drop as an add-on sometime in the next week.
But this is Doug. This is something that you have to. I mean, another company I know, Frog God Games, obviously.
Yeah.
We no longer have pre-shipping. We will ship when because things change so quickly. You know now that the U.S. Postal Service does not have to go through Congress to change their shipping rates. They're changing their shipping rates to
very quickly, almost real.
Own.
Sometimes it seems real time.
But you have to take this into account, right? This is what you do. This is part of your job running a Kickstarter. Is to sit there and say, okay, I have to assume that at some point shipping this cost might go up X%. How do I cover myself if that happens?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so what we've done is and Backer Kit, I God bless him, and not in a Texas God bless him kind of way. Oh, God bless him. Oh, you've just been slammed. Oh, you just got the polite of doom. Anyway, so but this 2-wave shipping thing is just freaking brilliant because I can basically almost have all of my inventory in hand and take a really good guess as to what my quantities will be as I see the surveys come in, and I basically almost get the stuff. Like I order the stuff to be sent to me. I set the shipping rates. People pay for shipping, and it's almost to the now. What Glenn does, and I need to look into this. What Glenn does, and I'm not quite sure how he does it, but he's like, I have a web store, so he does his own fulfillment. And you check out through his store, and you get to pick whatever shipping rate you want. And he just boxes it up and sends it to you. But you do your own. Basically, the customer does his own shipping since he has a web store. Right. And, rather than say, oh, first Kickstarter handles it, then Backer Kit handles it, then I handle it, and then I print labels, just say, hey, the customer can go in, see what the rates are. You pick. You want to pay $90 to get it here tomorrow? Great. You can pay $90 and I'll slap a label on it today. If you want to pay $5.50 media mail for a qualified package to send, 10 pounds of stuff to California, then great. We'll do that. But it's on you, and we'll just bit print it out as it goes. So the trick there is really delay assessing shipping until the last moment. But there's got the only thing where you get a little bit in trouble is, I'll tell you what, being able to print out what I did last time, and it was just brilliant. Is I did it by package group. So Backer Kit will arrange things. All of these orders are the same. And then you push that to ShipStation or Pirate Ship or whatever you use. Backer Kit will let you do it too, but the integration of tracking numbers with ShipStation is awesome. I know I get emails when they're sent out. I get emails when they're delivered. So I know exactly when things are arriving, and if things get lost and the backer contacts me, I boom right there, and it's great to track. Anyway, so doing it that way and doing it myself, so I have the tracking number and it's all in hand, and I know exactly what postage I'm getting and stuff like that. It has been really good, and I would miss that, I think, if I did it one order at a time through my website or something. Oh, right, that was the last thing. 4 parts of postage. There's shipping, there's postage, there's staging, which many people miss. Don't forget to charge for the box. They're not free, and paper products are really expensive. This stupid I'm going to do a rare amount of cursing here, because I've got a couple of kids. This stupid ass box is almost $2, right? I mean, it's a great folding mailer, and it's wonderful, but it's hard to get a box. I used to be able to get boxes for like 50 cents a piece that were just that. It's 2 or 3 or 4 times what they used to be. Right, and with fuel surcharges and blah blah blah, getting it here can be expensive too. So I'm Daniel. Pirate Ship. I've heard great things about Pirate Ship. I just happen to have already gone to the ShipStation, and I'm wired in, and I'm an old man now, so I get set in my ways and get off my lawn, and whippersnappers, and I'm the old man yells at cloud. Ah, damn it! Roll D20. But I have accepted the innovation of D12s that are labeled 1d4 3 times because I don't like to step on
Caltrops?
I don't like to step on this.
Right, it's a caltrop. I mean,
This is a metal one. This is a metal one where you can cut yourself on the edge. That's my boy. Anyway, so yeah, and then the other is don't forget to almost every fulfillment service will charge about $2 per package as handling. And as I was getting into the wrapping, I timed it for myself and said, okay, that's about right. That's about right, especially if you're a one-man shop trying to cycle through things quickly. It's not $100 an hour. It's not $200 an hour. It's not crazy talk. But it's like the amount of time when you're in kind of, I'm boxing up 150 of these, tape, whatever. About $2 each is about right. And so don't be afraid. If you go to a fulfillment service, you're going to be paying $2 basic, and then $1.50 or $2 for the box, and then frequently there's a pick fee, right? If you have 7 items or 10 items or whatever. Oh, that's the other thing that you're going to want to do. If you can possibly bundle things together, like when I did these cardboard counters for TFT, the company that is in China that I used to use, but I don't use anymore, said, "Oh yeah, we can shrink wrap these 5 together." This saves over $1 because at 20 or 25 cents per item, if they're separate, it's an extra $1 for pick fees, and you almost never see that ahead of time unless you are a spreadsheet foo. Unless you get your spreadsheet, but this is one item. So this saves you $1 of shipping charges and stuff. So understand how that breaks in and make sure that you don't want to overcharge, right? You don't want to overcharge your customer for shipping, but you also want to fairly appraise what the value of shipping is, and understand whether or not you can eat it. On my big items, like in my GURPS campaigns, I'll have like for $250. Yes, absolutely. Sorry, Bill Barr said buy yourself, if you're doing shipping, buy yourself like a Dymo 4XL 4-inch by 6-inch thermal printer. It will never need ink. The labels are awesome. Full size UPS and USPS. It's just, and you pack them all up and then you bring them to the post office. And most post offices, you can literally wheel in 200. Like in mine, I walked into the post office. I grabbed a bin that had to have been a cubic meter volume, bring it out to my trunk, put them all in the bin, push them in. They took them right in. And actually, there's something, if you really want your post office to love you, at least Backer Kit will do it, but there's something called a scan sheet, which compresses like 200 orders into one beep. So they don't actually, it's really cool. So they don't actually have to individually hand scan in. So you bring the scan sheet and they're like, beep, thank you. And then you get really good service because you've really saved them a lot of time. But that's another thing. So yeah, the Bill's point about the thermal printer, absolutely. And not only that, but you'll find that if you have mailing of your own to do, you're going to save yourself a lot of money because so I make swords, martial arts training weapons. I have a Type 14 sword and buckler thing that I've made out of hickory here. But I make these and sometimes I sell them to people. And I made a Patreon subscriber of mine a pair of Viking style one-handed swords, and I priced it out on ships, but I did have a box. It needs to be 30 or 35 or 40 inches and however deep and whatever. And so I'm like, you know what? I know what this is going to cost. I'll go to the UPS store. I'll box it up there and send it. Well, it was $15 through ShipStation. And UPS wanted to charge me in the store over $100.
What?
For shipping and $30 for the box. So to get all that done in store. So what Bill says is not just true, it's really true, especially if you're shipping stuff that can be long. Yeah, so absolutely that the thermal printer and either stamps.com or ShipStation or Pirate Ship is especially for a small business that needs to economize and get the best deals. You're basically purchasing bulk shipping by proxy, because all of those fees go through ShipStation or Pirate Ship, and they get to say, well, we're going to be spending $15 or $50 million with you. What deals are we going to get?
Right.
And the deals are substantial, obviously, especially for oversized packages. That's all I have to say about that.
See, Doug, this is why we bring you on, because you have a wealth of knowledge that few others have, because there aren't that many people, mailing swords, but it's an oversized package. You can give anything from a small mailer to swords and have personal experience about it. That's a rarity.
Right. Well, I think some of it is I feel that the more that I attempt to demystify the insides of this, the more that people will cut me slack when I need it. But also, you understand, like, look, how can you charge so much for a PDF? Aren't electrons free? And it's like, well, no, because 80% of the cost of development of an RPG product is getting to the PDF stage, right? It's
Right.
The words are not free. The editing of those words is not free. The re-editing of the editing is definitely not free. Layout and I like, you can do it through stock art, and I have some wonderful stock artists that I use,
Right.
but I like to commission work from freelancers that fits what I'm doing perfectly. And I love paying for art because it means the project is moving.
I mean, listen, my initial covers for Swords of Witch of Continual Light was actually stock art.
Right.
But it's because, I was a Patreon supporter of James Shields, and he's like, oh, you like the black and white version of that? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but I don't know. He goes, well, there's a color version that you're entitled to as a Patreon master. That was rejected artwork from an actual full project. Like, really?
Right.
And I use
right.
it.
No, exactly. I think I have a J.E. Shields. Not this one. That's Dean Spencer, who's awesome. Yeah, it's pilot here. Oh, this might be it. Oh, this is one of my favorite covers. I want to show this one. I think this is either J.E. Shields or his company. No, I'm sorry. This is Eric Lofgren.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite covers because this is from my character collection 2 Rookies.
Oh yeah.
Right. But it's this great adventurers arguing over the map and whatever, and they're focused on whatever they're doing, and they are gonna get their butts eaten.
Eric, throw them up
eaten,
on the
right.
Make him bigger. I can't see that. I can't see it.
Hold on.
You're too tiny. Hold on.
I got to embiggen him. Hold on a second.
Yes.
He's getting big in here.
There we go.
There we go. Oh yeah, awesome. Oh, that is cool. That's a great cover.
Yes. I love that cover. I love it. I wanted to do a book on rookies. I have 4 character collections. One was an 8-page trial to see what people liked, and mostly people liked it. One person gave me some vile feedback, but that's fine. That happens. But then I did 2, 3, and 4, which were much larger, and some of those people really inspired. And once I printed out the cards, something like 180, 170, and maybe they're like 176 cards, it becomes a resource. Like, you can meet all of these different people, and these, like, a paragraph of backstory and mannerisms and stuff, and the world just starts to come alive. And once I get the actually, I've already got the template. I certainly will move these backstories into the OSR space with OSR stats and move them over. And so, you can either use them as characters, you can use them as NPCs. It's 72 different, like Bandits and Outlaws is the longest of the 3 books, 72 different characters in that one. 12 of them are a mercenary company that lost a battle, and the 12 of them are banditing together. But they're professional military force. with experience, and so they're very dangerous bandits because they're not your usual, oh, I was starving on the farm and so I needed to
Right.
raid some chickens. This is a professional military force with archer support and a mage and whatever. So that's a great adversary that you can put wherever you want. But yeah, so I hope to play a lot more in the OSE space, and these solos are hopefully the first of many. And I've got a concept in the back of my mind that will take my Vikingish world and really make it portable. I'm calling it in my head the Infinite Archipelago. And it's basically a hex that's 250,000 square miles, about 500 by 500. And an author gets a hex. And 250,000 square miles is Borneo or France or Germany or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's plenty. And as long as you leave some ocean around it, which I'm going to ask that people do, then you can have a realm. And if you say, let's say 10 years from now, we have 500 of these, well, half the world, half a planet the size, a little bit bigger than Earth, is 400 hexes. So even if you said, I'm going to have an interesting realm and surround it by, and the other thing about one of these hexes is at medieval travel speeds, it's about a week. So to travel across a pure ocean hex is about a week. So how many weeks away do you want it to be? You can be Hawaii in the middle of nowhere, or it can be Japan, which is island. But in any case, Infinite Archipelago is going to be something that I'm going to do, and you're going to have a hex, and an author can fill it, and other people could write for it if you wanted to, and put new adventures in there. But it's basically a small enough area that somebody can do it. But then any game master can say, well, I want totally not ancient Egypt hex within easy sailing distance of Macedonia and Greece, and I'm going to drag in the dwarf Viking land of Barakthel from my campaign, from my setting, and those are next to each other. But some other person is like, Vikings are so old. I'm tired of Vikings. I don't want Vikings, but I want Aztecs. So he writes, and you bring in the Aztec thing, and you put that next to medieval England or something, just because. Why not? And then you drag in some totally dinosaur cavalry knights versus whatever. And then on this other island is Kaiju Island or something. And so you can just build whatever world that you want, and it can be as near or far as you need it to be, just by taking these sort of, it's from the bottom of the Arctic Circle to the bottom and top of the Antarctic Circle, or if you're from Australia, from the top of the Antarctic Circle to the bottom of the Arctic Circle. You get about 800 spaces like that are in that range for a slightly larger than Earth-sized world. And so there's a lot of room to make your own world, and it can be anything you want it to be. And you can do a lot of adventuring in a land the size of Germany, right?
Oh my God, you can do a campaign,
right? So
one time in there, but
right. So that's kind of what's coming, and I'm going to start by turning my Nordland Viking setting and the associated lands into some of these hexes.
So
and
it's going to be your next project, or what's going to be your
what's next? So first the solos, obviously.
Yep.
Then I've got actually 3 GURPSy projects, 2 small bestiaries, and a book on using shields. It's like my dungeon grappling book, but for shield use.
Okay.
Because most games, shield is +1 armor class, or shield is +2 armor class, and that's it. But when I'm trained to use shields, they're very dynamic, and you use them aggressively, not just to hit, but to manipulate the other person's shields and weapons, and you pin someone's arm to their body so that they're sitting there like, whatever, with the shield, and it's much more active, and it provides cover, and so there's a lot more to it. And like the Viking long shield, the round shield that I use is half my height, right? So I'm 50% of my body is occluded by this thing, especially if I posture myself right. I remember doing this with Matt Finch, and when he and I chatted, and I got into my shield position, and he's like, "I can't see you at all," right? And he's like, "This is astounding. I never would have thought that." And so there's different ways of holding the shield and using the shield and whatever. So that one's going to be a very niche product, I think. I don't know how well it would adapt to old school stuff. I think it requires a few more options. But the grappling rules adapted okay, so there's probably a way to do it. But the key things is boiling it down to basics, right? Shields provide cover. You can strike with them. You can block with them, obviously, but you can also bind. You can manipulate the other person's weapon, shield, or themselves, and effectively grapple with them. And once you start adding in that sort of thing, where you have 3 or 4 or 5 options, where you say, this is not just a plank that I carry. This is a weapon. This is a weapon. Not only is this a weapon, this is one of my most important weapons. And it's the first thing that I use, not just an accessory to a sword or an axe or whatever. This is the first thing that the enemy is going to run into. So it's actually really important. Anyway, so I'm a bit of a shield nut. I probably overdo it. I make them using mostly authentic techniques. They're a lot lighter than you'd think. But it's just one of those things where I've wanted to have a book like that, and so I'm going to publish that one. I've got some systemless stuff coming. That's really just kind of settings that you can bring in. Two Warring Houses is that project. Oh, and I've got another GURPSy thing coming. David and I we talked about it. David Pulver and I are working on a macro setting that is the home of Iron Skull Castle and the 4 solos and a couple other things, and I'll probably make that into Infinite Archipelago space. So that'll be 1 or 2. David is one of the only people who I would just say, yes, you can have several hexes, right? Because I worked with him so much, and I know that he'll retain the scope of the project. I probably shouldn't say this out loud. I did talk to Rob Conley about fitting some of his awesome stuff.
Oh, that would be awesome.
In the Infinite Archipelago framework. Taking what he's got and saying, okay, here's an island, and this is Bat in the Attic Island or whatever. And that would be a great vector for him to have totally not this thing, which is totally not in what used to be the Judges Guild, and it's totally not here in OSE, where you can plunk it down as an island somewhere. Or an island or two and fill it over time. But I would happily work with him. So open invitation there to help him get his stuff out. That starts to get complicated just a little bit. Not just I love Rob, and we talk and whatever, but he's going to want to control his own destiny.
Right.
As well he should. And I have very specific things in mind for the Infinite Archipelago. And I want to make sure that we don't clash over expectations, because he is fully capable of doing his own stuff and doing it well. So he doesn't need me to do stuff, but if he does need me, I'm there to help.
Oh, fun time. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Is what else we have coming up from Doug.
So and even beyond that, I've got permission to do a standalone role-playing game that's powered by GURPS.
Whoa, what?
Yeah, so Mission X is I've had permission to. It was supposed to be this year, but all kinds of crap hit the fan, right? And things went long and whatever. But I have permission to do like the Dungeon Fantasy game role-playing game box set.
Right.
I have permission to do a standalone game using the powered by GURPS rules, but modifying them however I'd like to. So call it GURPS 4.5 edition, Doug edition, or whatever. But I'm calling it Mission X. It's kind of a blend of Stargate SG-1, the more militant parts of that, plus XCOM or XCOM 2, where you get to go shoot aliens. Colonial Marines a little bit with the Aliens second movie, but also a bit of Old Man's War by oh my God. It'll come to me. Scalzi, thank you. Yeah, Scalzi. Yeah. Scalzi's Old Men. He wrote like 3 or 4 books in that series, but the first one was really interesting in how it set up the universe. You know, going out into a very hostile universe where everyone's against you, and what do you do about that, and how do you deal with that? And so there's a little bit of dungeon fantasy role-playing game in space where you've got a team of highly trained people goes out into the world and into the universe using the equivalent of a Stargate, but it's not a Stargate, but I've got the tech worked out. But it was part of my Alien Menace campaign years ago. And Steve Jackson Gann said, hey, you know, can I get some ballistics in Gaming Ballistic? And Elaine Dawson is like, let me pitch it. And Crom's like, yeah, he should do that. And Steve and Phil are like, sure, he can do that. So I have permission to do a standalone game that is all me. Now, I probably, unless I get 1,500 or 2,000 backers or whatever, I probably can't do a true box set. Right. But my understanding is a multi-book set in a slipcover still counts as media.
Oh,
okay. The slipcover does not invalidate media mail.
Okay.
But I need to validate that. But anyway, the point is that it's books for the harmonization code. It's 4901.99, which is important when you're doing value-added tax, because books are like in the UK, I think the VAT is like 20 or 21% or 15, but whatever. But books are 0. Many countries that do VAT have 0 rate on books. And that's why you start putting in counters or dice or whatever into your project. And it seems like a great idea, but now the Europeans are paying 20% more in taxes.
Right.
And Europeans are not used to seeing tax exclusive pricing. So when they say $50 and then get charged $60, they get mad.
Oh, yeah.
They get mad because
we had a big problem with Frog God. One of the reasons we stopped shipping overseas and we only do print on demand is because they were getting hit with VATs, value-added tax, and they were blaming us like this is your country. This has nothing to do with us. But it would make them angry, and that would, that's your customer getting mad because they're getting a book from you. They're already paying $100. Then they had to pay another $75.
$120. Yeah, exactly. Right. If you get $50 or $60 shipping.
Yeah,
and then another 20 or 25 in tax. Oh, and by the way, in a lot of countries like that, the shipping is taxed. Yes. So you may pay $20, $75, $50 to get shipped there, but it's subject to a 20 or 25% VAT along with the product. So if you're doing it like Frog God and me are different, because Frog God is large enough. If they're importing 1,000 or 2,000 books, it meets the threshold that Frog God has to collect and remediate the taxes. I never meet that threshold because I'm just too damn small. Now, here's the thing. GamesQuest is a registered VAT agent for Europe. So they're one-stop shop. They spent £30,000 to get properly registered that way or something like that. But it means that they can handle all of that for you. So that's one of the reasons why I love Mark Fulford at Kix2, but being able to just zip in and out and do special DDP delivery duties paid to the EU is too tempting. So I do that. But yeah, these are the little things that every now and then a customer is good enough to relay to you politely. And sometimes they really get mad at you, and that's still valuable, but less than, hey, maybe we could do this a different way. And I've tried to apply that, and last project worked great. Hopefully this next one will work great too. So Mission X, and I have this Dragon Heresy thing, and I have literally 1.5 tons of books sitting in a warehouse somewhere, and I think it's time for level 6 through 20 to see the light of day. So and I have a monster manual. This started as a Dragon Heresy book. So I've got the art, I've got the stuff. All I have to do is convert it back to 5th edition Dragon Heresy or OSR. Do people do OSR publishing monsters in color, or is it all black and white?
No, they do
A
color.
little both. Okay.
Did color too,
Yeah.
But I mean, this is 185 monsters in here, right? I mean, I've got the stuff. It's not going to be that. So I've got enough that will probably carry me well through 2023 on my plate right now.
Well, that's awesome. That's fun.
Yeah. And the only thing that I need is like I will not exactly jokingly tell anyone who's willing to listen. There's nothing wrong with my business model. That my projects usually are between 450 and 600 backers. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with my business model that an extra 1,000 customers would not fix.
Well, I think that.
but what I mean that right. So you know me. I'm a PhD project manager, research and development guy. Did 20 years in technology and process equipment development. The second page of my resume is 20 or 30 patents on it. So that's my opportunity cost, is not going back into that world. But I really kind of like making games. And you get to that 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 backer mark, and it's a no regrets move. Just keep doing what I'm doing, because the even well before that, frankly, the opportunity to make sure that my family is taken care of and call all of my own shots and
Oh yeah.
be indie game guy is an awful lot of fun. But that's I'm hopeful that being able to bring the wealth of great writing that has been done with me and for me and occasionally by me for other systems into the 5e Dark Dragon Heresy and now of course the OSE space will make my business far more sustainable, if nothing else, because I don't have to say, oh, I know you just saw an OSE Kickstarter from me in February, but here's another one 3 months later. I hope your wallet's recovered, right? By spacing them out and not having to say same market, same market, same market, same market, it gives people a break in what can be tough times.
That's a point, and that's something a lot of companies don't have that opportunity. They're all hitting the same well each time.
Right.
Holy crap, we're nearing 2 hours.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, don't be. We always do this. We enjoy it.
Oh yeah, no, this is
quick updates. As a few minutes ago, ShireCon update. Apparently, all 8 slots in Dominions of Tenkar are sold out. Whatever. I will be running sessions of it though. I was planning on tomorrow night, but nobody signed up on Discord yet. But I made a late announcement today.
What?
I know. By the way, Discord has forums.
Game
now.
with you? I'll sign up if it comes. Oh, I can't. I got dinner tomorrow night.
That's a camp.
Oh, I'm serious. I'm having dinner with Guppy tomorrow.
You can't miss the
Guppy.
Guppy.
I mean, how can I miss that? I can't miss Guppy. No,
I'm going to do one Thursday and one Saturday this month. I'll be running Ninja Tenkar for 3 hours. Saturday will be an afternoon because I want to play test it before the con. But if it isn't this Thursday, it'll be the following Thursday. But again, all 8 slots are filled, which means I got to go and figure out what I'm doing for the second and third slots. Me and Rach. Rach gets my seat. I stand the whole time anyway. So somebody can get pissed off this year that the GM's wife was playing in his game and didn't even register for it.
That
folks,
bastard.
That bastard. There's a join button down below if you want to support the tavern. It's a great way to do it. It's $1.99 a month. Other than that, the link at the bottom of this screen, tenkars-tavern.games /OSE-solo. That will take you directly to Doug's current Kickstarter. I'm already a backer at $50 because I know Doug not only does excellent material, but he's one of the few that gets it to you on time or early. If he doesn't, it means that we're having an Armageddon. Honestly, it's got to be a bit more than a problem with the supply chain for Doug to be late. Honestly, so if you are an old school gamer and you want a game with just your spouse or you and your child, by by yourself. Excellent opportunity. Doug gave me a PDF that I haven't had a chance to do much more than peek at, but hopefully this weekend I'll have a little bit of time to play it. And if I do, I will review it. But try to do it without spoilers. So good luck on that one. I'm not much of a review person, but I generally suck at doing so. Spoilers, I can't help it. Other than that, Mike, what did we miss? Oh, we got guests for the next 4 weeks lined up already.
Yeah, so after listening to us yammer on for the last few months or so with the sporadic guests, we're going to try something different, and we're going to have actual guests. Doug was the first the next 5 weeks, and then so you're not going to get here as yammer as much. We're actually going to be able to bounce off somebody else.
Right.
Now the next guys they're not going to be as intelligent and as erudite as Doug was tonight. They're gonna yammer a little bit.
They all bring something different. We got Don Samora next week, August 17th, the 24th, Ben Burns, the 31st, Bill and Ben Barsh. Bill's a definite. Ben may only give us part of his time.
The hair might not be able to schedule.
The hair might not give us his full attention. And actually, September 7th, we'll have Tom Wilson of Shire Con, which I just mentioned.
Shire Con and Throwy Games. Yeah, Shire Con's coming up, man. It's geez.
It's coming up in about 5 weeks.
I just sent him a big box of stuff. If you're going to go to Shire Con, I sent him a giant box of giveaway stuff. I threw a copy of Torchlight in there too. I didn't know if you had any up there. So
okay.
I threw a big package of a whole bunch of copies of Swords Wizardry Light. If you may,
need good. I'll need that. So.
You might need those. They're in a folder. They're in one of the Swords Wizardry old style folders. So.
Okay.
You go there. Tell Tom that's for you. Don't let him get his grubby hands on that. So that's for me. But yeah, there's a bunch of Frog God stuff in there. A bunch of North Texas stuff. So hopefully does he have raffles there? How does he give away stuff? Or does
he has auction? He has auctions, and he also has a raffle too. But I think everybody gets you go, you get a raffle. So, all right. Well, then we're going to do the general wrap up again. Thanks to Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
Always great to have.
Always great. Always great to have Doug.
Yes, he may become a frequent guest because he has an insight into the industry that very few are willing to give or are able to give. I'm not sure which combination it is, but Doug gives of his time and his knowledge very freely. There's no like Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. You can't find out these secrets. Doug will tell you. So he calls balls and strikes, right? Is that what they say? He calls balls and strikes. So, folks, as always, we're in the midst of the endemic. That's the new thing, right? Use your common sense. We're not your parents. We're not going to wipe your face and get the schmutz off you. Use your common sense. Be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Roll them well. And I'll be back again tomorrow. Look at the kitty. Tomorrow, I'm looking to run a session of Tenkar's Minions at 8 p.m. on the Discord server. But if you don't get enough signups, well, I'll be hosting a regular Tavern Chat hangout. So either way, we'll have something to do. All right, folks. Laters.